All right, we're back here on SportsLine, filling out some brackets tonight as we get set for the NCAA tournament. Actually begins tomorrow night with the first 4 games, the first 2 of those in Dayton, 2 more on Wednesday, and then things get going for real. Thursday, Tennessee 1:45 in the afternoon from Indianapolis against 14 seed Longwood. Number 2 seed Kentucky in the East region, also in Indianapolis, a night game against St. Peter's up there, followed by Murray State. By the way, that could be a very interesting matchup in round 2 if it would happen. We're going to fill out a bracket here because that's what we all do this time of year. I got to get mine done, and we can talk through things. If you want to join in on the conversation, 737-7767. Your thoughts on the bracket, how it came out. I just gave you some of my thoughts. What do you think about Tennessee's road or Kentucky's road? What do you think about the possibility of some intriguing matchups? Do you have a sleeper? Have you picked your Final Four? We want to hear from you, and the phone lines are open if you'd like to join the conversation. But we'll start in the West region with number 1 overall seed Gonzaga. Gonzaga is not going to have an issue with a 16 seed. It will be Georgia State in round 1. Now, Boise State-Memphis is an interesting matchup. Boise State is a really good team, maybe underseeded as an 8. Memphis has played well as of late, maybe slightly higher seeded as a 9. Tigers have played really well. Jalen Duren looks good for a kid who should be a senior in high school. He's playing really well. The rest of that team is playing well. But I'm not sure I love the matchup. Memphis is good. Boise State better. I think feels more like a 7-10 game than an 8-9 game. Memphis certainly can win. But I like Boise State to win that game and take on Gonzaga in round 2. The big upset I like in this bracket, New Mexico State and UConn. UConn's a solid team out of the AAC. But New Mexico State plays 10 to 11 guys. It's difficult when you don't know anything about a team that has that much different personnel that play a bunch of minutes to try to figure them all out. That's the challenge for Danny Hurley and UConn right now. And I think it's going to be a big challenge. Teddy Allen is a terrific player for New Mexico State. Nebraska transfer, he's really good. I like New Mexico State to pull the 12/5 upset there. You know there's always going to be one in the tournament. I like that. Another team to watch out is Vermont. Vermont could have been a 12 seed. It's a highly rated metric team. But to me, the Catamounts have a difficult task to take on Arkansas. Arkansas last year struggled early in some games in the NCAA tournament against inferior opponents, but you play at that pace, you play with that defense, and you have a guy like J.D. Notae, you're going to be in pretty good shape. And I think Arkansas will be in good shape against Vermont and against New Mexico State. So I'll push Arkansas all the way through against Gonzaga in the Sweet 16. Now, an interesting one here. I've toyed with this one a lot. Notre Dame is the team I would have had out of the tournament with Texas A&M in. Notre Dame is playing in the first 4 against Rutgers. Rutgers has slayed a bunch of big-name teams this year, so I think Rutgers is going to win that game. And it seems UCLA last year, first 4 to Final 4. VCU in the past. We've seen it happen multiple times where a first 4 team gets hot. Rutgers has the talent and has gotten healthy late in the year to potentially do that. I like Rutgers to win, and I like Rutgers to beat Alabama. That's a struggle for me, but I think Alabama got a higher seed than it probably should have. It's won a bunch of big games itself, but it is not as good this year shooting the 3 as it was last year. And the way Rutgers can defend, I think that could be a problem for Nate Oates' team. So I like Rutgers to win 2 games, first 4 and the first round game, where it will then take on Texas Tech. Great defensive team for Mark Adams. Red Raiders into that second round over Montana State, and they'll take care of Rutgers. The run will end in a 3rd game in 5 days. Now, bottom couple of games, Michigan State, Davidson, fascinating contrast of styles. Tom Izzo against Bob McKillop and a Davidson team that can light it up from outside. Davidson's one of those teams where if they get hot, they could beat anybody in this tournament, but Tom Izzo's Mr. March. So I'm going to go with MSU, and then Duke will take care of Cal State Fullerton. So you got Izzo versus Krzyzewski, Coach K's final tournament. He's going to win and go on to the Sweet 16. And let's see here. We'll round out this bracket while we're doing Gonzaga, Arkansas. Gonzaga, too talented. It'll be able to handle the pressure of Arkansas, and it'll be able to score at will. I got the Zags moving into the Elite Eight. Texas Tech, Duke, fascinating contrast of a matchup here. You got the #1 defensive team in the country, Texas Tech, against the 7th-rated efficient offensive team in Duke. Veteran team, a lot of first-year players. I think that weighs out for Texas Tech. I think that defense will give Duke fits. I think they'll struggle to score. I think it becomes a rock fight. And I think then the experience of being in the tournament, some of these guys played in a title game a couple of years ago. I think that experience will get Texas Tech into the Elite Eight. But I do think Gonzaga's got the firepower to get past that defense and move on to the Final Four. So the West region in the books. We'll move on to the East here in a moment. But first, we go to the lines and say hello to Michael. Michael, good evening and welcome to SportsLine.
Hello, how you doing?
Good. What's on your mind?
I would love to see Kentucky and Murray State play in the second round. That'd be like the state championship of this year.
Me too.
And I would also love to see another rematch between Kentucky and Tennessee later on in the tournament.
Well, if that happened, it's going to be for the national championship.
I hope so. That would be awesome.
Yeah, no, it'd be a lot of fun.
And I agree with you on Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's going to lose, even though they beat us. I'm a Kentucky fan. Even though they beat us earlier in the year, I think Notre Dame will lose. And I'm with you on Chicago, Loyola.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think you're right on Notre Dame. Notre Dame had 4 wins against Quadrant 1 and Quadrant 2. Those are the things you always look for to measure how good a team is. And yes, they beat Kentucky, but they really didn't beat anybody else. So it's strength of schedule and a win over Kentucky that essentially got Notre Dame into the field. And I just don't think that was enough. It was a nice win, but that's not enough.
That was the first game we really played anybody, and this team is young, yet, you know, they're experienced, but they hadn't really meshed together yet. And they hadn't. This team loves each other, and I think Kentucky could go all the way.
I definitely agree with that. Michael, I appreciate the call. Kentucky is a very, very talented basketball team. This is the best team Coach Cal has had since 2014, 2015. These guys absolutely have the ability to make a deep run in this tournament and potentially cut the nets down at the end of it. There's a handful of teams in this field that I think have a legitimate chance, not just to make it to New Orleans, but to win it all. And I would put Kentucky in that mix. I would put Tennessee in that mix too. I wouldn't put Auburn there. I think Auburn is a really good team. I think Auburn could get to the Final Four. I don't think Auburn can get to the Final Four and win it all. So I just don't think that is likely to happen. But there are other teams, for sure, that have that opportunity. No question about it. Now, let's look at the East region here. We'll just move on down the left side of the bracket. Baylor, defending national champion. It is an amazing job. After everybody that Scott Drew lost last season, to bring a team back and get a #1 seed. I mean, Donovan Mitchell, Jared Butler, Mark Vital, Jonathan Tchamwa-Tchatchoua, all those guys are either gone or injured in the case of Tchamwa-Tchatchoua. He basically has Adam Flagler back with a whole new cast of guys. James Akinjo's in there. Kendall Brown's a great freshman. Matthew Mayer came back as well. So there's a couple of pieces that were reserve role players given a whole new cast of character, and Scott Drew has Baylor on the one line again out of the conference that was rated as the best in the country this year in the Big 12. Incredible job. Now we'll see if they can do the job and try to repeat in the NCAA tournament. They certainly aren't going to have any issues with Norfolk State in round one. North Carolina, Marquette, that's an interesting 8-9 game. North Carolina's been really up and down. Shaka Smart's been to the tournament a lot before. Armando Bacot, though, is a guy who played at Marquette, who transferred to North Carolina. He's one of the best players in this region. You think he's going to be motivated against a former team? I think so. Carolina wins in that game. St. Mary's, 5 seed, really sneaky good 5 seed. And then you get the first 4 team, Wyoming, Indiana. Indiana's got Trace Jackson Davis. I think that's good enough to win the first 4 game. He'll give St. Mary's a run, but I think St. Mary's is going to get through that game. UCLA, Final Four last year, inconsistent this year. They get an Akron team that got hot in the MAC tournament. I don't think Akron is even close to the best team out of the MAC this year, but got into the NCAA tournament. UCLA is going to cruise there. So I got Baylor with that defense winning over North Carolina. UCLA will take care of St. Mary's. Those 2 teams get to the Sweet 16. Texas, Virginia Tech is fascinating. Virginia Tech looked awesome this weekend in running through the ACC tournament. Texas has been totally up and down all season long. But here's where I talk about the emotions of a big run, like what we saw with Virginia Tech. Can you repeat it the next week? Are you able to bounce back immediately? Now, the Hokies do have till Friday to try to get those reserves going and get set. But that was a heck of a run they had to secure the spot in the field. It wasn't clear they'd be in until they had that run and won the automatic bid. I think Texas and Chris Beard, who I think is one of the best coaches in all of America, will have a game plan that can slow this team down. If it gets into a rock fight, as Tennessee saw earlier, Texas is equipped to win that. So I think Texas wins in that game. Purdue will take care of Yale. Boilermakers have a lot of talent and are very efficient offensively. Because of that, they'll be able to match up and push and shove against Chris Beard's defense, but they're going to find ways to score, whether it be Zach Edey, Travion Williams, or Jaden Ivey on the perimeter. Those guys are going to put up points for Purdue. The Boilermakers will get to the Sweet 16. Then you get to the fun part of the bracket, at least here locally. Murray State, San Francisco. Gosh, it is a difficult draw for Murray State, and I don't love it. You got a West Coast Conference team, so not a Power 5 team in San Francisco that has great metrics, top 25 team in the metrics, against a Murray State team that wins the OVC, sets records in doing it, has won 20 in a row, top 25 in the metrics. I thought Murray State could have been a 6. I didn't give them one in my bracket because I didn't think the committee would give them one. But I think they could complain that they could have been a 6. But instead, not only do they get the 7, they get a really good 10 seed in San Francisco. I think San Francisco could have been on the 8-9 line pretty easily with everything that they've done. So that is a really tough battle. As a matter of fact, San Francisco is a favorite by 2.5 points in that game. But this is a Murray State team that has a chip on its shoulder, that has been to the tournament before and won games. Back in 2019, it made it all the way to the Sweet 16. KJ Williams, Tevin Brown were a part of that. Those guys are the stars of this team. I think they'll be motivated. I like Murray State to win in Indianapolis on Thursday night. Kentucky will face a plucky St. Peter's team. Maybe deserve better than a 15 seed, but Kentucky's going to roll it with all that talent. And then you get that very interesting Commonwealth showdown, Murray State and Kentucky. It's a game I'm sure Murray State fans love because there's no real pressure there, right? You just get to go after it. I don't know, although Michael seemed to like it because of the Kentucky battle. I don't know if a lot of Big Blue fans love it because of the pressure that is inherently on Kentucky in that game. Ultimately, it feels like that Wichita State-Kentucky 1-8 game back in 2013, 14, somewhere in there, where you had a great Kentucky team, you had a Wichita State team that was coming off a Final Four that had these weird metrics in that game, and those teams match up in the second round. And it felt like whoever won could move far and deep into the tournament. I don't know if Murray State has a Final Four in it, but it certainly has the capability and the roster to make it to the second weekend. I just don't know if it has enough to beat Kentucky in this particular matchup. So I like Kentucky to win, which sets up the Sweet 16. Baylor, UCLA, as good as Baylor's been, UCLA did it last year and has a lot of those guys back. I think UCLA can get hot. I think UCLA can match up and score against this Baylor team. And I think UCLA will get to the Elite Eight. Purdue, Kentucky, oh gosh, this is going to be a war. I can't wait for it in Philadelphia in a couple of weeks. Purdue, Kentucky. I think what comes down to it for me in this is I feel like Kentucky has gotten better and better as the season has gone on. And I feel like when you look at Purdue, even Sunday, the path was finally clear. Illinois, Wisconsin, the co-Big Ten champs knocked out. Purdue's in the championship game against Iowa, a team playing its fourth game in 4 days, a team it beat twice in the regular season, and the Boilermakers didn't get it done. For whatever reason, it just hasn't clicked the way a lot of people thought. Because of that, I've got Kentucky going into the Elite Eight. Kentucky versus UCLA. Great matchup. Storied programs. Who's going to get there? I can talk my way into either one, but I think Kentucky's been slightly more consistent. So I'm going to send Kentucky into the Final Four to take on Gonzaga. We'll take a break. More of your phone calls welcome. 737-7767, the number. We'll come back. We'll do the other side of the bracket right after this. Stay tuned.